Greetings to everyone. May God's peace be upon you. We will aim to present the topics we share with you under three main headings. Today, the first subject we will discuss is related to esotericism. Following this discussion, in our next video, the topic of transmigration, reincarnation, and unity will be addressed. Finally, we will delve into the concept of the cycle of existence, its journey from itself to itself, through the desire to be known, and its place within the unity of the Creator under the framework of the theory of cycles. Today, we will explore how individuals who seek to understand themselves wonder about the purpose of their creation and strive to comprehend the laws of the universe approach their quest. We will examine the historical flow of how such individuals pursued knowledge and discuss what it means to access esoteric teachings and ancient wisdom. Let us take a look at the transmission of this esoteric knowledge from the earliest times, from the ancient period, through the religious and philosophical currents of those eras. Since the moment of creation, humankind has been striving to unravel the mysteries of existence and being. Whether by assuming the identity of a philosopher in the realm of thought or that of a scientist in the light of science, humans have sought answers to countless questions. Why were we created? How did the universe come into being? What is the relationship between the universe and humanity? How do living beings and natural interactions undergo transformations? In this quest for answers, humans have thought, questioned, and sought paths to ancient wisdom. During the pursuit of this knowledge, hundreds of belief systems have emerged and, evolving through generations, have reached us in their present forms. Every discovery requires support, proof, and determination, as well as effort, to uncover the next layer of truth. As the path to truth is as numerous as the created beings themselves, the Quran states, "We have sent a guide to every nation," emphasizing that each community has been given a guide. It is further stated, "We do not hold anyone accountable until we have sent a messenger," affirming that every community has had a perfect guide possessing ancient wisdom. These guides were sent to call people to worship God alone and to avoid idol worship. Only then would they be held accountable, as expressed in Surah Al-Isra 15 and Surah An-Nahl 36. Now, let us try to define what esotericism means. Esotericism, which is not a belief system or a religious doctrine, refers to the transmission and teaching of ancient inner knowledge and secrets through initiation and guidance by wise individuals to those deemed worthy. These teachings consist of esoteric secrets that must be earned and are conveyed in stages and degrees to those who qualify. As esoteric teachings pertain to inner knowledge, they differ from exoteric teachings, which relate to outward practices and are associated with revealed religion, ethical rules for society, and the organization of community life. Exoteric teachings include rituals and acts of worship, while esoteric transmission occurs through guidance or initiation, passed on by perfect guides to those who are prepared to receive it. Here, it is important to note the similarities between esotericism and mysticism. Mysticism, as expressed by its adherents, is often understood as the state of becoming one with God, or the Absolute. It is rooted in the awareness of the unseen beyond the visible world. Mystical thought perceives the eternal within the transient, unity within multiplicity, or the absolute within the contingent, and the transient within the eternal, multiplicity within unity. As such, it emerges as a belief and ideology that gives rise to two distinct concepts, pantheism and panentheism. Pantheism regards the universe as God, or God as the universe, whereas panentheism sees the universe as a part of God. mysticism gives rise to different interpretations and understandings from these two perspectives and advocates for a view where the universe and God coexist and move together. In our next video, we will attempt to explore these belief systems from the perspective of unity. It is evident that esotericism is often mistakenly pulled into the religious domain due to its confusion with mysticism. However, esotericism is neither a religion nor a set of religious principles, nor does it rely on a religious source, as it is often defined. One notable exception is the need to differentiate mysticism rooted in Islam from Islamic esotericism. For example, Jewish esotericism is called Kabbalah, which represents an esoteric discipline, a collection of thoughts and principles within Jewish mysticism. In Buddhism, the esoteric interpretation is referred to as Vajrayana. In Christianity, esoteric interpretations can be seen in sects such as Brahmanism and Catharism. When viewed through historical periods, the origins of esotericism can be traced back to the ancient era, around 500 BCE, 570 to 510 BCE, with the philosophical and religious schools founded by Pythagoras. Due to the belief in the immortality of the soul, the concept of transmigration of the soul, reincarnation, also began to be adopted during this time. However, during the transmission of esoteric knowledge, the incomplete understanding and perception of some recipients gave rise to flawed belief systems. These persisted until the concept of unity emerged and the true nature of the soul was comprehended. Until then, belief systems often emerged that were based on the idea that the spiritual essence of individuals would live on in other bodies, an incomplete understanding of the soul's reality. As mentioned earlier, the comparison of these topics with the concept of unity will be covered in our subsequent videos. Similarly, another philosopher who believed in the immortality of the soul and the transmigration of the soul was Plato. In Platonic philosophy, where esotericism is described as the inward path, Plato teaches that after the guide offers the initial clues, the individual's journey begins with themselves, and they reach their own esoteric knowledge within. Plato's views on the soul and the belief in its immortality influenced thinkers up until the end of the ancient era. The fact that every piece of transmitted knowledge gives rise to a new school of thought and diverges into various paths highlights the diversity of ideas. Yet ultimately, duality will cease, and through unity, everything will unify. This is precisely the foundation of Melamed. When we look at the Hellenistic period, we encounter a pre-Christian philosophical system, a monist philosophy that viewed the entirety of the universe as one. Socrates, Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, Confucius, Kongfuzi, and Tao all lived around the same period, approximately 500 BCE, during the Axial Age. This was a time when foundational ideas about governance and spirituality emerged independently across different cultures and geographies. These teachings, spanning Greek, Indian, and Chinese communities, began to promote the philosophy of know thyself for a better life. The inscription, "Know thyself," at the entrance of the Temple of Apollo emphasizes that spirituality and religion fundamentally focus on knowing and understanding oneself. When we trace this back, it becomes apparent that the origins of religion date to Asia around the 6th to 5th centuries BCE. Looking at pre-Socratic philosophers, we find numerous philosophical schools. The first of these was the Milesian school, established in the 6th century BCE. Thales, who proclaimed that water is the fundamental principle of everything, was among its notable figures. Anaximander, another prominent philosopher of this school, conceptualized the first substance as undefined and infinite. He posited that from this primal substance emerged transformations and differentiations, such as cold and hot, moist and dry. This section will be explored further in relation to the concept of unity and the theory of cycles in subsequent discussions. Among the thinkers of the same period, Anaximenes identified air as the fundamental substance from which everything originates. He proposed that through the processes of condensation and rarefaction, air transforms into fire, wind, clouds, and eventually into earth. Following this, Pythagoras hypothesized that everything is composed of numbers. Meanwhile, in the Ephesian school during the 5th and 6th centuries BCE, Heraclitus suggested that everything in nature is in harmony and held together by a dynamic, infinite structure he called logos, which he associated with fire as both its representation and its ultimate return. In another philosophical school, the Eleatic school in Italy during the same period, the concept of unity and divinity was central. They argued that God is an omnipresent being who permeates the universe and governs it through thought and mind. Parmenides, a prominent figure of this school, contended that there exists an unchanging reality that is the only true and comprehensible entity. In contrast, the pluralist school, represented by Empedocles, 490 to 430 BCE, partially agreed and partially disagreed with these views. While he supported the idea of the immutability of the primary substance, he believed that this substance was pluralistic and composed of 4 fundamental elements: fire, air, water, and earth. Anaxagoras, another influential thinker, proposed that the primary substance is unchangeable, the initial elements are infinite, and a divine mind governs and orchestrates these substances. During the same century, the Atomist school, as the first materialist system, emerged. Democritus defined atoms as the fundamental substance and argued that the motion of atoms in the infinite void creates all physical forms. Lastly, Diogenes, recognized as the final natural philosopher before Socrates, accepted many principles of the Milesian school. He viewed natural processes as the result of the condensation or rarefaction of the primary substance. Sophism, a philosophical movement in ancient Greek philosophy, is defined as the art of rhetoric and intellectualism, where philosophers express their thoughts in a philosophical style. Emerging after Thales, the first philosopher of the 5th century BCE, this movement evolved to a highly critical stage, often feeding individual egos. The focus of this movement was human beings themselves. According to Protagoras, man is the measure of all things. After Plato and Aristotle, Sophism began to be viewed with disdain, as it was increasingly associated with manipulation and misdirection, leading to incomplete or misguided understanding. In ancient Greek philosophy, the period from Aristotle to the rise of Neoplatonism is referred to as Hellenistic philosophy. This era was influenced both by advancements in mathematics and science, and by Pythagoreanism, an esoteric belief system. Aristotle proposed that the soul is a part of the body, acting as its form, and supported the idea of transmigration of the soul, suggesting that the soul passes into another being after death. Like Plato, he sought truth within objects themselves, but also within their essence. Plato, along with his teacher Socrates and his student Aristotle, are considered some of the most influential figures in the history of philosophy, impacting religions such as Christianity and Islam. In the later period of antiquity, the concept of gnosis, knowing God, and the idea of the soul's liberation from suffering began to spread. Gnosticism argued that religions were insufficient for attaining the knowledge of truth, and instead emphasized that truth could be accessed through inspiration and spiritual insight. Esotericism in the Middle Ages. In the Middle Ages, the influence of ancient teachings began to wane among Christians, while in the Islamic world, the effects of various religious cultures and diverse ideas continued to hold their relevance. During this period, pagan religions spread across Mediterranean countries, while Zoroastrianism, Manichaeism, and Islam gained prominence in the Near East. Meanwhile, mysticism continued to expand in northern regions. Paganism and pantheism as belief systems will also be discussed in our next video. After the 8th century in southern Spain, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism merged to create a unique unity. In the 12th century, Kabbalah, a significant aspect of Jewish esotericism, played an important role in the history of esotericism in southern France. In the 13th century, Averroism, which emphasized rationalism and rejected mysticism, began to gain prominence in belief systems. By the 14th century, mysticism had become dominant. Esoteric knowledge is a profound and challenging science that can only be understood by those with high levels of perception, insight, and awareness. Esoteric knowledge is the wisdom hidden within a person's essence, an inner, divine, and sacred knowledge. This raises the following question: is it possible for these ancient teachings to be understood by individuals unworthy or unprepared, merely through theoretical knowledge, without experiencing and internalizing unity? Can this knowledge be applied without being lived, internalized, or witnessed? Can a person reach their essence this way? Unfortunately, it is not possible. One cannot achieve insight without being qualified. Consequently, the thought systems that arise from such incomplete understandings are inherently flawed, leading to duality. Outside of unity, individuals attribute existence to themselves, creating a sense of selfhood and divinity, thereby remaining trapped in duality. After death, one might believe that their self-ego will continue to exist by wearing different bodily garments, carrying forward the existence they currently perceive as themselves, an existence composed of the substance of creation and a combination of divine names. However, what continues is the essence itself. What we assume to belong to us, the individual soul shaped by experiences in life, is not what persists. This soul, often described as the relative self, or, in other words, the self composed of a combination of divine names, does not endure. After biological death, the composition of divine names dissolves and ceases to exist. It is impossible for the same composition to come together again in the same form. This concept will be further explored in our upcoming video on the theory of cycles. In our next video, we will discuss the incomplete beliefs and perceptions that have led to the concepts of transmigration and reincarnation, and analyze their shortcomings from the perspective of unity. I hope that those who seek to know themselves and understand the truth of their existence will find guidance toward uncovering the treasure within themselves. Goodbye, and stay in goodness.